We're recording.
All right, hold on. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Self-Publishing Podcast. Today, we're going to have Gary Jonas on, who's got a really good message of sticking to it. I mean, I guess I don't know if that's his message, but that's what we're putting on it, Gary.
That's the words Dave put in his mouth.
Right, and let's not detour into other things that Dave might put into people's mouths.
Or things he might draw.
Way not to detour into that.
Yes, I'm not going to detour into it. That's what I'm avoiding right there, that thing I just did. But basically, Gary kind of gave up on himself and then made a career out of writing after recovering. And as Sean said, it's not, what is it? What was the...
Oh, if it's not the last chapter, it's a plot twist.
There you go. So Gary's going to be our guest, but first we're going to do something cools.
Oh, okay. I actually have a something cool, but I'm afraid I think you guys are going to make fun of me. Actually, I know you guys are going to make fun of me.
Well, now we're definitely going to.
But I even brought a visual.
Is it that you're not wearing a collared shirt like a professional, and Dave and I both are?
No, I would like to know what happened, though, because I would have gladly worn a collared shirt. But I didn't know. I show up, and you're in a collared shirt, so we're on a few minutes.
It's like that episode of Modern Family where Mitch decides that everybody's going to dress up for Halloween at his office, and it's just these two douchebags.
When he's in the Spider-Man costume. I remember that episode. That's funny. Yeah, so anyway, it's this veggie pasta. Right, can you see this? Jeez. All right, no. Because here's the thing. See, I love pasta, but it's just so bad for you. Like, it's just terrible for you. And I'm trying to be really, really good, but I love pasta. And so Cindy's tried like 83 different kinds of like, not pasta that's not really pasta, but this is like, it's just the H-E-B brand. Sorry if you don't have an H-E-B, but it's made of like carrot and squash and corn, and it's super, super good. It's the first one that actually tastes like pasta, and I'm so excited because now I can eat pasta.
How many carbs are in it? 84.
No, a lot. 40 grams.
Oh my God, you ate only pasta.
Okay, so wait. Just to be clear, so for a 2-ounce portion of pasta, 40 grams is actually what normal pasta has, I think.
No, this is 4 ounces.
Okay. So, and is it, how much fiber is in it?
Welcome to today's episode of...
Yeah, maybe we should move on. Hold on.
No, I want to know.
Dietary fiber, 4 grams.
Okay.
40 grams.
You can also get this thing, for those of you intrigued by the veggie pasta thing, is I think it's just called like a spiralizer or something. It's you use.
Oh, we have one of those. That's awesome.
Yeah, I use that, and it's just like it basically shreds like usually summer squash or zucchini into pasta-like strands, and you can use that instead. And I do.
Okay, but those are pasta-like strands, and I do dig those better than a lot of the fake pastas. But this shit actually tastes like pasta. It's not a sacrifice.
But you do realize that it's not really doing what you want it to do.
Yes, I do realize that, but it's still the best.
I would like to know the other
tastes just as good as chocolate. It's just like chocolate. It's just as bad as chocolate. So I'm happy.
I'm pretty sure it's not just all vegetables, that they've got other stuff in there that makes it pretty close to pasta.
No, there's
semolina in there.
Okay, I'm not reading the ingredients here. We need to move on to another something cool.
And it's not as dangerous as vegetables, as Dave has told us. Vegetables.
Well, I don't have to suffer equal life.
Listeria.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So, Dave, do you want to go next?
The only thing I have cool is something I've said before. That show, The Americans, just awesome. If you're not watching it, you're missing out.
We should change Dave Something Cool just to Something Americans.
Something Dave watched on TV. No, I haven't said Americans this season, I don't think.
No, Something Americans or Legion. I literally think you did it last episode. Or that episode.
Well, well. I got nothing else, man. Nothing else good happened in my life in the past week. Nothing at all. So I got nothing. I discovered nothing. I had nothing happen. So that's as good as you're getting.
Well,
I didn't get any fancy pasta.
Okay, I really, really hope that this episode is good enough that when we record the next one at the top of the hour, this could be your something cool.
My wife did have us try some new pasta like several months ago, and it was like half fiber, and you immediately had to run to the toilet after.
Oh, so you already have those shit issues anyway. Did you just crap at the dinner table?
Just move the dinner table to the back.
Was your family like, what's that smell?
Well, I called a plumber and asked how much it would be just to install toilet seats around the dinner table, and he just walked out. Actually, he ran.
And then mine then is that was really brief. Did you want to elaborate, or just it's cool? Although I do think that the seats around the dinner table that are toilets that's pretty cool. All right, so I'll go.
Worst show ever. I'll elaborate all you want.
All right, so mine is, and this is a little bit of a cheat, but it is cool this week is Story Shop. So obviously the last week for the live recording, I don't know how this is going to play out in the audio feed, but for the live people, we announced we did a whole show on Story Shop last week. But now that it's out, and now that it's been out for a week, like publicly available, it's just great to see people getting in there, and people were somebody shared a screenshot of some work that he was doing on Facebook today, and we saw that, and it's just, I love seeing people in there and using it, and just it's just getting a lot of great praise, and I think that's great.
Yeah, we have pretty much the diehards are in there now, like the people who are either part of the Kickstarter or have been really waiting to try it out. But we still have a lot of work to do, and we're working on Writer. So that'll be basically, we'll get it out to the wide world once Writer's done with all the fanfare. But right now we're like really content to just kind of keep it quiet. And it's amazing to see how, like, I love watching, Johnny, don't you love seeing all the like suggestions come in for new features, and the best ones are voted to the top?
Votes them up to the top. So
yeah, so
what features you guys actually want and want most. So very excited about that. And Sean says it is kind of a soft launch. We want to keep it quiet, but I don't want to keep it that quiet. So if you are interested,
I think Johnny wants to keep it quieter than me.
It's at storyshop.io. .io being the new cool app extension, I guess. So anyway, so storyshop.io. And with that, I will welcome our guest, Gary Jonas. Hi, Gary. How are you?
Hey, Gary.
Hey guys, how's it going?
All right.
Fantastically.
Good deal.
So I'll do the intro here. Gary's been writing since 1990, when his first short story was published. His first novel, One Way Ticket to Midnight, was published by Small Press in 2002, and his first screenplay option in 2004. But then he walked away from writing, quitter, in 2008.
Drop the mic.
Only to come back in 2011 with Modern Sorcery and going full-time in 2015. Today we're going to talk to Gary about his journey, why he left writing, why he came back, and the things he's learned along the way to make a career out of it.
Well, there you go. That sounds like fun.
Professional.
Yeah. Now let's just have a long
for me.
pause, a long unprofessional pause.
Dave rules. And Gary, it's great to have you here.
Well, it's great to be here.
For coming on, Gary.
You bet.
So tell us about the beginning. What happened and what went wrong?
Oh, wow. Well, okay. How many hours do you have?
It doesn't have to be in that order.
We got a full hour to talk about horrible things. So go.
And you can start in media res and then do a flash forward and then go back. Like really play with your narrative.
Especially if any children were ever in jeopardy.
They usually
Especially if children were in jeopardy.
They usually are. Okay. I actually started writing a long time before that. I started off as where everybody thought I was going to be a comic book artist for Marvel. And in fact, when I was 17, I met Stan Lee, which was kind of cool, and went to a signing, and a friend of mine said, "You got your sketchbook, you should show that to him." And I said, "Oh, come on, not really." And Stan Lee heard him and said, "Well, let me take a look." So he looked through and said, "You're really good. You ought to send a portfolio to Jim Shooter, the editor-in-chief at Marvel." And that's how I got my very first rejection. So that was
Wow, that was an awesome setup.
But I mean, you got a rejection from somebody awesome.
Yes, it was very cool, and I had a good time with that. I was actually pretty good at that. But what happened was in college, I wanted to get an easy A, so I took a short story writing class. And we had to write 3 short stories. And when you do a drawing, you show somebody the picture, and they can look and they go, "Oh, that's really cool." But with a short story, they actually have to read the words that you've put on there. That will create worlds and characters, and they'll have these emotional responses. And I just couldn't get enough of that when that happened. So the next semester I took a novel writing class, and that's when things really changed, because the lady who was teaching, she'd done a couple of young adult novels, but she gave us the book Writing the Novel from Plot to Print by Lawrence Block. Now, Lawrence Block was a mystery writer that I loved. He'd done the Matthew Scudder books, the burglar books. I'd read some of those and loved them. So I read this book in one sitting, cover to cover, and I sat there and I went, this is actually possible. You might be able to make a living making shit up and selling it to people. This is insane.
It is the best way to make a living in the world.
Isn't it?
Isn't it?
It's just awesome. So I went right back to the beginning of the book and read it again. So in that class, we're supposed to write the first 3 chapters and maybe an outline. I think I wrote my first novel in 2 weeks. And unfortunately, I submitted that, so don't tell me. It was terrible.
Was that 2 weeks just for the draft, or was it 2 weeks edited and everything? Like you just wrote it and sent it in?
I wrote it in spiral notebooks to begin with, and so that was 2 weeks. And then I typed it in. That took a couple more weeks, and then I sent it to DAW Books. And so they rejected it, of course, as they should have. And later I had a ritual burning of it so that I could never be blackmailed for it.
I was just going to ask if you still have the notebooks.
Oh my goodness, no. And so yes, and it's funny because I had the title Death Sword, and I said nobody would ever write a book as bad as Death Sword. Nobody would use that title. And of course, there are some people on Amazon who have that title now. So
interesting side note, that was also my stripper name.
I should have known. That makes sense.
Interesting. I did know. I knew that joke was coming the moment.
As soon as he said it.
Yes.
It sounds like Michael Scott from The Office might name a book that.
Probably would.
Yeah.
I think he has.
Yeah.
What was his script called?
Threat Level Midnight.
Threat Level Midnight. That's right.
Oh, that's awesome. So yeah, anyway, I ended up writing some short stories after that. I was like a quarterfinalist in the Writers of the Future contest a few times, and then by the time I could enter again, I'd already hit my 3 professional sales and couldn't. But yeah, Marion Zimmer Bradley bought my first short story, so that was way cool. And I just didn't want to look back at that point.
So you were on a path to sure success.
Oh, surefire success, you bet, because everybody reads short stories, right?
Ooh, I sense an Act 2 coming.
There's always Act 2, right? That's where you have the fun and games. So I wrote this novel, One Way Ticket to Midnight. I think the original title was Midnight City Blues, but too many people were having City Blues or Polar City Blues and a bunch of other stuff being published, so I changed it. And yes, I did take the title from Sammy Hagar. Get your one-way ticket to midnight, right? So,
catch that,
but
yeah.
You know, the fun thing on that one is horror was dead, and so all the publishers were sending me letters saying, you know, a couple of years ago we might have bought this, but not now. Horror's dead. Sorry. So I tried submitting it as dark fantasy, and they said, yeah, sorry, horror's dead. We're not paying this as dark fantasy either. Too bad, so sad. So that's why I ended up at a small press many years later. And I'd written a bunch of novels in between there along with the short stories. And after seeing this book come out from a small press, you know, you get good reviews, no sales. And I said, all right, what else do I want to do? Because I've wasted a lot of time here. So I switched over to doing screenplays. And I know you guys just went to the Robert McKee Story Conference. That's actually how I started with the screenwriting. I went to that conference. And I went to the one in Vegas. So I had a great time there doing that. And I learned quite a bit about story. I'd read the book. Had you guys read the book before you went?
Yeah. Well, actually, no, I have not read the book. I listened to the abridged. Oh. No.
No, I can hear Sean.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, he read the book.
Okay, good. Got it.
He read the book, and I have not.
Oh, you have not. Okay.
Correct.
My impression when I was at that seminar is that he was basically performing the book. So
yeah, yes.
You know,
if there were coughs and throat clearing in the book, then yes, I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
So you can save your money and just buy the book, you're saying?
You get different things out of it, though.
No,
you know?
I absolutely think it's worth going because you deepen it differently, and especially for somebody who's just starting out in story, I can imagine it being kind of life-changing. You know, because you're surrounded by other people who are trying to tell stories, and his information is fantastic. It's a little long-winded, but it's good information. It's the foundations of what makes story compelling.
I agree. And then the third day is worth it because that's when he does Casablanca and dissects that. And there's so many things you learn in that. You know, the scene in Casablanca where Sidney Greenstreet gives the letters of transit and says, I don't know why I'm doing this. And the audience says, I don't know why you're doing that either, so we'll let you have it.
Right.
I love that. That came up in the Aaron Sorkin masterclass too. When you don't have a good explanation, just admit it. Like,
yes,
it all the time.
No, and it's the same thing in copywriting. Like, you have to look the reader in the eye and address that objection, because if they're thinking it and you don't say it, then you're an asshole. But if you both agree, then it's good. I loved in the Casablanca thing, that one scene where they're meeting at the airport and there's all the things that aren't said between them, welcome to Casablanca, but they're both being total dicks to each other, but it's all subtext. That was just fantastic.
Indeed.
I would go if he was breaking down Birdemic instead.
That's a masterpiece.
I don't think James Guyon can break down Birdemic.
What was the subtext when he explained that the one girl was missing because she, quote, had to take a shit?
Was that a statement on the quality of the movie?
It's a genius film.
Okay, you've not seen Birdemic?
I have not seen Birdemic.
What is wrong with you?
Dude, you
Why
need to do
are you on
yourself
this
a favor. Yeah, it's worth it.
Okay.
But anyway, you saw McKee in 2002, right?
Yes, it was a long time ago. That was actually before adaptation. So he was talking about adaptation. And the funny thing is, he didn't mention that Brian Cox was going to play him. And so when I'm watching the movie, I went, oh my God, that's actually Robert McKee.
That's what I thought.
Isn't it amazing?
Because he so nails him. Like he does. It's the best performance of a real person like that I've seen. It's just so good.
Definitely. That was amazing. So I love that movie anyway.
So back to your journey.
Yes.
What happened next? You were writing screenplays and you were going to write another book.
Yeah, I turned around and started writing screenplays, and in order to learn how to write screenplays, I adapted a few of my novels, and I'd actually done a version of Modern Sorcery before I turned to screenplays, so that was one of the first that I adapted, and I changed it up quite a bit, which made it helpful when I went back to write that as a novel. But with the scripts, I ended up going to the Santa Fe Screenwriters Conference, and we did pitching to various producers, and I had a writing partner on a script called The Seventh Hour. It's an action movie. And so we did, I think, 5 pitches, and 3 of them asked to see it. And then one of them ended up optioning it. And so that was way cool. And it's nice to have the check.
How does that work? Is that like a speed dating for like pitching and producers, kind of?
Sort of. You get 5 minutes to pitch to each producer that you're going to pitch to, and so you have your time slot, and everybody's pitching goes into pitch, but you go in the room alone with them to pitch. So it was very cool and nerve-wracking as hell.
Yeah, that sounds nerve-wracking. Yeah.
So do you have like an elevator pitch and all that?
Yeah, and then they may ask you questions, and you have to be ready because sometimes they'll say, okay, that doesn't work for me. What else you got? So they want to hear something else. So make sure you had other things to pitch. So that was fun, and then had another script called Any Last Request. That was a family drama that was optioned, and that one was actually done through some local producers to begin with, and then it ended up in Hollywood. And fortunately, the writer's strike happened because the notes they gave me on that were not going to be the same movie. So it's like, and then the option expired, so I didn't have to deal with that. They wanted to start with a fresh slate, so that was good.
Now I know you wanted a family drama, but we're thinking man choice.
I co-wrote. I'm sorry, and I'm having trouble with my speaker here, and that's sort of the.
Well, Dave was making a really inappropriate joke, so that's too bad. Yeah.
Oh man, I missed the inappropriate joke. I'm gonna have to listen back to this. I don't want to do that. That'd be terrible. Hear how bad I sound on this. So anyway, did this. Got the producers there. Hated that, and Weapon of Choice was just a nightmare. And with that one, I co-wrote the script on that. I was a producer, and the money fell through. And when the money falls through on a movie and you watch it fall apart in slow motion, it's just soul crushing. So I don't recommend it.
I can imagine that. That would be horrible, because you can actually see a finish line where, okay, I'm going to see this thing that I created from nothing. And it's going to be up on the big screen, and I'm going to tell my family, and everyone I went to high school with is going to know that I made a movie. And then it just doesn't ever happen.
Yeah, and that's no fun. And I felt bad for the actors, especially because some of these people had gone through martial arts training. We had all this martial arts in the movie, and so they had all this training, and we worked out all the choreography, and then none of that ended up getting shot. So they couldn't.
When was this? What year was this?
This was 2006, 2007, somewhere in there. And so after that, I said, okay, I'm going to take one last shot at the writing, because you hit that point, and I kind of look back at the wreckage of my life and said, okay, I don't really have a whole lot to show for all this stuff I've done. Yeah, I got some short stories, and I have a novel out, but didn't really make a whole lot of money, and still working a regular job, and I hated that. So
that's what I was just gonna ask. So all of this other stuff was always a side hustle, right?
Yes.
So 2015
Yeah,
is the first time it was. 2015 is the first time it was. This is my full-time gig.
Yes. Yes.
Well, we didn't get to that yet, Sean. You're jumping ahead in time.
No,
That's okay.
he said that at the beginning. It was a callback, bitch.
Yeah, it's a callback. We're doing the Quentin Tarantino thing of
That's right.
Out of order. It's okay.
This is called shuffled narrative.
Who do you think he is? Me blowing all the secrets that everybody wants to build up to?
Well, no, we're not going to tell all the secrets. That would be no fun, right?
Yeah.
You gotta keep that secret handshake away
Gary,
from
would you sell the secrets for $97?
It would have to be $99.99.
Fair enough.
So yeah. Anyway, I decided to do that one last novel. I looked at everything that was being sold at that point, and I thought, okay, urban fantasy was doing really well, and I'd done that modern sorcery, so I wrote that up as a novel again, using the screenplay as my outline, and went to a writers' conference where the Jim Butcher's editor was there. Her name is Ann Sowards, a terrific editor, and she was doing a thing where you could read the first 2 pages of your novel and she would give you a critique. So I did that, and all these people are doing it, and she's selling all kinds of stuff to them. And with me, she didn't really say anything. She said, "Oh, thank you." And I sat down and went, "Oh, well, that went well." And then afterwards, she chases me out into the hall and gives me her business card and says, "Hey, I want you to send me that book." So I said, okay. So I said, all right, if she accepts this, I will keep writing. And if she doesn't, that's my sign that this is not going to happen. And I need to go just build a different career. And so when the rejection came in, I walked away. So yeah, I'm a quitter. It was fun.
But no, that's a plot twist because you bounced back, right?
And with the same book. So that's even kind of interesting too. I had not paid attention to all the changes going on with publishing because I was working a business, and I was selling books online. And so paperbacks were where it was for me at that point. And then I guess ebooks started taking off, 2009, 2010. Yeah. And so I hadn't really paid a lot of attention to it, but I met up with a writer friend who told me she was doing pretty well with her ebooks. And so I said, "Oh, that's great," And a couple of friends said, "You really ought to put your stuff up on ebook." And I said, "No, come on, nobody wants to read those things." So I just kind of ignored it. And then I get this email. The email came in on February 17th of 2011, and I remember the date because it was 4 days after my father passed away. So, and it was this writer that I'd talked to, and she was starting a publishing company, and she wanted modern sorcery because she'd heard me read the first chapter at a convention. And so she said, "All right, I want that, and I want a couple books after that, a couple follow-ups." So, well, that was the same book. So that was my sign. So I went back to writing.
All right.
And,
I'm sorry, Gary.
You got the yes you wanted just much, much later.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So
go ahead, Johnny.
I'd actually like to fill in a blank here that we're all kind of glossing over. And that's
okay.
That you were doing this before ebooks. So
yes.
I don't know if people have heard me talk about, like, of the three of us, I'm the one who did that whole bullshit where pitching agents, going to writers' conferences and following the agents around like, "Oh, there's the person who can make it all happen for me. I really got to impress them." And then the roller coaster of up and down, and somebody likes your stuff and somebody doesn't, collecting rejection slips. So I hadn't made that connection quite yet, that like you were doing it the old school way and having a modicum of success before quitting and then going, "Oh, here's the Renaissance that I can hop aboard," which is where kind of all of us entered the picture.
Yes, and it was such a different world back then. And you know that from the Bialy Pimps, right? So
from submitting and failing repeatedly, no actual knowledge, but yes.
But you'd had the rejections, and that's the important part. Because back then, when you wrote something, you didn't know if anybody was ever going to get to read it. And so you'd write a story, and it may just languish in your files. And the same thing with a novel. I had a bunch of novels that never sold. And so that gets old. And that's another one of those things where you're like, why am I even bothering to do this? So with the change in publishing that happened, now you know that if you write something, you can publish it and people can read it. And there's just no comparison to that. And
so do you feel like you would you have ever tried again without this change in publishing?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, I missed it. I was always writing down story ideas, and I'd say, no, I can't go there.
But you just wouldn't make the time because it was like, you just saw it as, it could never be more than a hobby.
Yeah. And it just wasn't worth it. It wasn't enough. There wasn't no money there. It was just, I didn't want to mess with it.
It's a bitch, guys. For those of you who haven't done that, like, it's just, it kind of is soul crushing because you sold some stories. I never sold any stories. And that was the way you were ever going to sell. If you wanted to write novels, well, you got to write some stories and sell those first, even if you don't want to write stories. And you just endlessly, like, you didn't even get a chance to ask the audience. Like, readers never got to weigh in. It was this gatekeeper, and it was like, damn it, will you pay attention to me? And it depended on the whim of some assistant sorting through their slush pile and mail, not even your talent necessarily.
That's the script world now, because it has to make it through all the readers before it makes it anywhere else. And if it's not their thing, it could be the best script ever. I mean, think about really off scripts, like something that Charlie Kaufman wrote. If that had to make it through a reader ahead of time, right. That way they think it's too weird. Like, oh, this doesn't work.
Additionally, he was saying he was trying to sell a horror book, and they're like, well, horror's not selling. If you came to us a few years earlier, maybe we would have had a yes for you. And that right there, I think, is the biggest thing about publishing digitally now, because there are people that still want to read horror. The publishing houses were afraid to take a chance because of the glut of horror at the time, I'm guessing, and their books just weren't selling. But
it's not just even about sales. It's about the opportunity cost, because they can only handle so many books, right? And they have to print them, and they have to ship them, and there's finite shelf space. So the economics of the decision making is totally different.
And then you also have to consider another factor, and that is that they only have a certain number of slots available each year, and most of those are already filled with their typical authors. Stephen King has his slot, Dean Koontz, Janet Evanovich, Nora Roberts. They only have a few slots available to new coming writers. And so you're fighting against thousands and thousands of other writers to get those few slots. So it's really a hard gig.
So with Modern Sorcery, did this other publisher publish it, or did you do it yourself? How did that shake out?
It started off through another small press, and so that wasn't making me any money either. And so I had the first 3 come out through there. I didn't want to do the self-publishing thing, because when you come up through traditional publishing, self-publishing is seen as bad.
Right.
Because back then, the idea of self-publishing was that you'd kind of gone to a vanity press, and now you've got a garage full of bad books that you can't sell to anybody, because it's not like people could just order them online. So it was a completely different world, and I had to adjust to that. And that mindset was the hardest thing to get. So, because gatekeepers, you've got to be vetted. You've got to make sure that you've got something quality that you can offer to somebody. And so then I did the thing of self-publishing a novella just to test it. I had to see if I could do it and how it felt. And so I wrote up a novella called Night Marshal. It's kind of a weird Western about a vampire gunslinger, and put that out myself. And sure enough, people bought it. And that was kind of cool. It didn't sell a lot of copies, but it was selling. And I said, okay, so I paid a respectable New York editor to do the edits. I got myself a nice cover. This wasn't that difficult to do. I was able to format it myself. And after a few months, I was in profit mode. I said, this isn't too bad. So I started learning about it. And I mean, I found you guys with your self-publishing podcast. I found, Joe Conrath and Barry Eisler and all the people doing stuff, David Gogger and all the people writing things. And I'm reading all these books about it, learning everything I can about it. I'm trying to pass this on to the publisher, and they wouldn't listen. And the covers that we had were not appropriate for what was selling in the market, and it wasn't branded. And so I worked a deal to get my rights back. And when I got the rights back, I got new covers and republished them. And that was October of 2014. The book started selling. Next thing you know, September 2015, I'm making enough money to go full time. It was amazing.
So getting to that point where you were able to go full time, did you have in your mind, like, okay, I need to make this amount of money before I quit? I mean, did you have other concerns, like you need to do this and this and this before you would allow yourself to quit? Or did you just kind of like jump into the void and like, okay, it's working, I'm following this full steam ahead?
I'm kind of a risk taker to some degree, but I knew I had to have a certain amount of money coming in.
Mhm.
And September, I don't really want to talk a whole lot about finances necessarily.
No,
but
we don't have to get into numbers.
September was the first time that I did break $10,000 for a month. And so that was kind of a milestone for me. So I said, all right, that makes sense. And I knew as long as I was making a certain amount, I could cover all my bills and I could cover taxes and wasn't too worried about it. I had a crap job, so it wasn't a big deal to leave it. And also, I'm not married, so I don't have any kids that I'm aware of, so I don't have to worry about that, right? So it's only me. So that made a difference too in the kind of decisions that I can make. People who have families, they have other obligations that they have to consider too.
So would you advise writers that want to write to leave their families if it's holding them back?
Or lock them up in the basement like you do. That works too, right?
That's much more efficient. So one thing I've noticed about you, Gary, just in the time that we've known each other, is that you seem super observant. Like you really listen really well. Sure. So what have you over the last few years, clearly you've done a lot, but it seems like you listen a lot and you observe a lot. So what are the advantages that you found of just kind of being quiet and really taking it all in? And what are some of the quiet things that you've seen and heard that you just kind of assimilate into the way you do things that you've never maybe even thought about until right now, but you're thinking about absorbing that way?
Well, actually, this is something I was telling Dave in email. I'm running an experiment right now, and this experiment is based on things that I've been listening to here lately. Michael Anderle, who does the Kutherian Gambit books, he kind of coached some people, including people like T.S. Paul and I think Craig Martell and some others who have become successful. And I was paying attention to the things he was saying. One of the things he said is, you can test something with, like, say, 3 short stories to see if there's a market for that sort of thing. And if there is, write longer books and keep them coming out, put them out fast. I think the biggest thing is how fast you have to write, and can you do that? Some people can't. So, but with the series, if you're writing them quickly, you can get this momentum going and carry that through. And so I've done the first book in a series and kind of under a pseudonym. The pseudonym's kind of secret, so we're not going to go a whole lot into that necessarily. But I will go public with that at some point. And but it's kind of an action type book, and it's doing really well. So you figure this is a brand new name. It's a novelette. It's 14,000 words long. I put the thing out. The only ads on it are Amazon ads. I haven't spent much so far. I have spent $16.32 in ads at an average of 3 cents per click, and I have $193.49 in estimated sales from that. So that's a average cost per sale of 8.44%. So I think that's
scary.
that's how you do the Amazon ads. Obviously, you have to figure those out, and so that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm learning those sorts of things so that I can keep these going. I should have the second book up hopefully this weekend.
Now that right there, that the first book that you have in potential series, is that the only way you're getting attention is through Amazon ads? You're not like sending anybody there? Wow,
I haven't sent
with a brand new pen name.
It's a brand new pen name. They're like, including you guys, I think there are 13 people who know who I am on that one. So,
and it's in Kindle Unlimited.
Kindle Unlimited, so it gets page reads, and so it's basically sold hundreds of times. I think it's got like a 5,500 sales rank right now, and for something that's a 14,000 word novelette with nothing else going for it, that's not too shabby. So.
No, that's a perfect test. I love that you threw that line into the water. So so you did all the basic stuff, right? Was this, you looked for the genre, the subgenre, and then got your commercial cover. I'm sure it has a pretty commercial title and a great product description, right?
Oh, all that stuff is in place. I did the cover myself, and I didn't want to spend a whole lot of money, so I spent 29 cents on a royalty-free picture to use as the cover. I just did it up through Photoshop. I'm a clean writer, so I didn't bother to pay an editor. It's a 14,000 word story. It's like, it is what it is. And,
it's a test.
It is a test. And, I made sure there weren't typos and all that kind of stuff. And so I used, there are a couple of tricks that you can use for that. And I write in Scrivener, but I transferred it over to to Word, and then I just turned on the grammar because that way I can catch things like if I typed he instead of the. And so that's one of those little tricks that I like to use for that sort of thing. And then I read the story out loud, and that tells me if I've got repeated words and all that kind of stuff. So I do that. And we talked about that some during The Apprentice. We had some stuff on that. But I'd been doing that for years. So that's a great way to go on that. Anybody who's not reading their work out loud, you're missing out on things that you can easily fix.
Well, you have some good like product development practices here. You basically got MVP on this. Like, what is my minimum viable product for this name and the series? And, like your 14,000 words is your MVP, and then you can study the results and go back and scale. I think that's really, really smart.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea.
Now, the series you're most known for is the Jonathan Shade Urban Fantasy series, and that's doing well for you. How do you determine what other genres to write in? Is it specifically market, or do you just follow your muse, or both?
It's primarily muse, because if I don't like something, I'm not going to be able to write it. I think that's true across the board for most writers, I would think, because how are you going to write, say 50, 60,000 words on something if you don't look forward to writing? That's not why we're doing it.
Surprised how many romance authors do that.
Well, I think most of the romance writers like writing the romance books, and it shows.
Yeah, but after a while, it's golden handcuffs. They're like, man, I just wish I could write fill in genre here, but the moment they deviate, like the checks dry up. It is a different genre.
I guess they are kind of stuck by the happily ever after and that sort of thing. But then a lot of them go over to like romantic suspense and other things. Janet Ivanovich made that switch.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, she cracked me up with her line on why she made the switch, because she did like 12 books before she wrote the first Stephanie Plum book. She said she had to stop writing romances because she ran out of sexual positions. I thought that was great.
So now that you're finding this success as an indie author, are you still looking for a traditional deal? Are you open to one, or what's that?
I have one book that I co-wrote with my friend Bill Allen, and that is currently with 47 North. They published that. It was part of their Kindle Serials program. I think ours came out shortly after your guys's.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, that was called Pirates of the Outrigger Rift, and that was the book that they do like a daily double, and that's why I got into the top 100 on Amazon, which is really cool. As far as other traditional deals, I'm not opposed to them, because to me, being an indie is not an ideology, it's a business decision. And so if I write a standalone book, I have no problem whatsoever selling that to a traditional publisher if the advance is good enough. Because on standalone books, I have not done very well. They don't sell enough, and so I'd probably make more from a good advance. But you have to look at, how's it going to do over the long haul? So you have to make those decisions, and that's a tougher decision. But as far as print rights, I'd be happy to sell those. And as far as series,
we'd all love to sell print rights.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Who's there? Print rights? Come on in.
You can just have them, really. but when it comes to other types of things, like with a series, they'd have to offer me life-changing money to get a series now.
Yeah, well said.
That's just not going to happen, because I can make too much on my own, and I like having control.
Well, it's the control, right? It's that you can be nimble. I mean, like if you're putting this in development terms and you've got that MVP out there, that's great, but you can't scale if you're not nimble, and you can't be nimble with a publisher. It's just different.
Yeah, because they're going to control your cover, they're going to control your branding, they're going to control any kind of promotions, which are basically none.
But they also control timelines. So if you
time.
want to, 18 months is the soonest you're going to get going on any kind of. We just don't have that kind of development time. Right?
And that's another reason for walking away when I did, because oh my God, I'm not getting any younger. So I don't want to do this.
What about scripts? Like, are you going to pick that back up? Are you going to try to adapt stuff, write new stuff?
I love writing screenplays. That's actually my first love, is writing screenplays, because it plays to my strengths of action and dialogue. But I don't like dealing with the changes that Hollywood producers want. And, I didn't have to deal with the same type that Kevin Smith did with Superman Returns, where they says, what do you say?
A giant spider.
You got to have a giant spider in Act 3. It's like, oh my God. And then the guy does Wild Wild West. Yeah. So, go figure. But I wasn't happy with some of them. We had one good producer who gave really good notes, and so the action script actually got better. And if it's like that, I'm happy with that. But my thinking is, with screenplays, you're selling all rights. So to me, it's got to be something where if I'm doing that, I'd have to be adapting my own screenplay, from something from one of my own novels to a screenplay. That way you still have the rights to the material.
Do you feel that, I mean, I know, of course, there will be some kind of democratization, with film, the way there's been with music or books or really anything else. But do you think it's a lot harder because budgets, right?
Yes.
To have a professional, yes, iPhones can do amazing things, but they can't give you a professional movie. Like, they just can't do that. So there is a huge barrier to entry there. But what kinds of changes do you see happening that is going to change that to allow collaboration, where a guy who's just a great director can hook up with a guy who's a great writer and a great producer?
Well, I think what we're going to see is more like the Netflix model. That's what I think is going to happen. Netflix has been putting out amazing shows, and Amazon is doing amazing shows. Man in the High Castle, Bosch. I love Bosch. That's a great show. And so I think that we're going to see a lot more of that. Hulu's doing that now. They did a great job with 11/22/63, the Stephen King book. So that's kind of where I see things going. I mean, are you seeing something different on your end? Because you're doing more with that now.
No, I definitely see that. I think there's going to be a lot of money for small content producers who can do things on a different scale, because the economics are just totally different. And I mean, Johnny and I have been talking a lot about this lately, how Martin Scorsese's latest, basically all the studios passed on it. I think Paramount was the last to say, no, we can't make it. It's $100 million. Martin Scorsese never lost money on a gangster flick. He loses money when he makes movies nobody cares about, but everybody cares about a Martin Scorsese gangster flick 100% of the time. They're always big. But all the studios said no because his last one, Silence, flopped, which, there's a lot of reasons why that flopped, but it wasn't a Martin Scorsese gangster movie. That's already a home run. So, and yes, I know Gangs of New York, but whatever. Like, this is a pretty good bet. But only Netflix said okay. Netflix gave him $100 million, and now Netflix owns this. And I think if they're going to give him $100 million, they're going to give a lot of other players $1 million or $2 million. Here, make your little show if you have an audience. And for people like us in this community, if we can get enough readers to justify to a company like Netflix or Hulu or YouTube Red or any of them that, hey, look, Apple's going to get in the content game. Right. So it's only a matter of time before we're able to kind of secure budgets based on the audiences that we have. It's almost like a few years ago when you had a really successful blog, you could get a book deal, right? Like, oh, well, you have 50,000 people who are reading your content, then we know that there's a market for your book. I think if we find that there are readers who are just kind of killing it online by themselves, it's going to be really easy for, a cash-rich studio or a company that has a studio department to say, okay, let's give these people some money to make some content. And they'll probably have, they'd be able to place someone like us with, a director producer team who understood what we're trying to do. And I think that they're going to be really good at placing those relationships. That's where I see things going.
I think so too, and especially when they start looking at, you have a movie like Get Out that only costs like $3.5 million to make, and then it makes $160 million. They're going to say, okay, maybe we should take some chances with some of these people.
Right. That's a great example. I mean, that's when movies like that come along, they send ripples through the economic structure because people think differently. But I mean, they think more critically. They think in the way we need them to think as artists who are creating things on the ground floor for the next generation and kind of really putting that scaffolding together. We're going to win as content creators because I think most people listening to this, as much as they love writing, books, I think they'd be tickled to see their stuff made into TV or film. And really, we don't have to be the ones doing that. If we grow the audiences big enough, there's always going to be people looking for niche entertainment. I mean, there's that whole thing. I forget who it was. I think it was the head of Fox or FX maybe a couple years ago said, okay, I give up. There's too much good TV. And I understand where he's coming from, but that's not going anywhere. Niche content is only going to get better and better and smaller and smaller. And So those of us who can build the audience can also create, and transmedia is where all of this is going.
Yes, I have to agree with you on that. I agree 100%. And you see, amazing shows being produced around the world, and some of those are being brought over here now. I think a good example of that is the Jack Taylor series with Ian Glenn from Game of Thrones. That's based on the Ken Bruin novels. Those are fantastic. Those are up on Netflix now, but I think they were aired on some station over there. They get them over on Netflix. Here you go. And then you look at like what Amazon's doing. They did something like Manchester by the Sea, and they put that out theatrically. They also did that with Frost versus Nixon or whatever.
Well, no, Amazon with Manchester by the Sea, they scooped that up, which just shows that they're smart. Like they didn't pay to have that movie made. I think they bought it at South by Southwest. Last year, but they're actually out there buying content that the studios are passing over, or they're outbidding the studios. So they're basically saying, look, we're real players. Like you have to take us seriously now, and it's a really interesting thing to watch.
Yeah, it's amazing to see what's going on with all those. And, they do their pilot season, and, who knows? They may take one of your guys' book. What if they say, hey, let's just do The Beam. Let's do that as an Amazon show. You're not going to say no to that because they're going to put the money into it to make it fantastic.
No, I wouldn't say no to that at all. Exactly. I would say no to, there was one time a possibility for like Yesterday's Gone, but it was on network, and that just seemed like the worst idea anyone had ever had.
Yeah, I don't see how it would work too well on network.
No, it would be completely neutered. It would be a stupid show, and so that's an easy deal to say no to, because you're basically selling out your audience and your complete artistic vision just to get a deal made. And I don't think that's the thing. People listening to this now need to realize that they're not in a hurry. Gary wasn't in a hurry. I'm sure he felt in a hurry many times over the length of the story, but the bottom line is you can always return, you can always get better, you can always anchor yourself from all the things that you've learned before.
And with that in mind, can you talk about the idea that like persistence and not giving up and stuff? I know you did quote give up for a while, but as Sean said, that's a turning point. It's
still had to decide to come back.
Right. So what is that mentality like? Because you've been at this a lot longer than all of it. You and I might have been at it for as long, but you've had more steeping in it because you actually had some success, and certainly longer than a lot of people who are listening.
Well, sure. And that's kind of the thing. And in a way, it has to be your dream. It has to be your passion. And now I can't see why anybody would walk away, because now you can just put the stuff up there. And so I know some people are, but my book's not selling. Write another one. It's really simple, write another one. There's no reason not to put the books out there. And maybe you put something up and, the first thing happens, you get a 1-star review. Okay, somebody didn't like it. So what? Is that
learn from that 1-star review?
Exactly.
If it's you suck, then that's not helpful. But if it's, man, get an editor, then go get an editor.
Yeah, it's not that hard to do. Editors aren't that expensive, and they're worth it. So, you take care of that. And to me, I totally understand people who walked away back in the day, because after you are turned down time and again, it gets old really fast. And nowadays, though, it's like, okay, so your book has a 2 million rank. Write another one. Write a series. How hard is that to do? Write the things that you love. Stop trying to chase a market just because books are selling there, and write the books that you love. And if you do those, they will sell.
Well, it's also, I find that, go ahead, Dave, sorry.
One of the things I find interesting, a lot of people that don't have success, they look at other authors that do have success and they say, well, that person got lucky. That person had a break. Gary got lucky in as much that he went to a conference, something he probably would have done regardless, because he liked he liked writing. He liked the people involved in that. He went to a conference. He read the first 2 pages of his thing, and that's kind of how he made a connection. That I think when we do something we love and we actually put our heart into it, and I know this goes against me, like, because I like to stay home and not go anywhere. but when you can go to events where maybe you can meet somebody, you never know what person you meet might be able to help you down the road, and in what way they might be able to.
That's so true, Dave. That's so true.
Big time.
Also, I mean, Gary's shown us two things just in the things that he said. He's not frivolous with his money at all. He's talking about a $16 ad spend that he has his eye on. That's really smart. He made his own cover for this test, and he didn't waste money on an editor because it was a test. Doesn't mean he doesn't value editing. It means this was a test, and he was trying to really watch his expenses. But I also know that Gary has gone to Robert McKee, not cheap, gone to a screenwriter thing. Then if he was pitching producers, that wasn't cheap. He's gone to one Smarter Artist Summit. He's going to this Smarter Artist Summit, and he was an apprentice. So he's spending money on his craft and to get better and to network and to learn, but he's also responsible about his bottom line. So do you want to speak a little bit to that, Gary? Like, how do you decide on what is worth investing in your, not just your money, but your time? Like traveling is hard. Apprentice was 9 months. How do you decide how to spend your available resources?
Well, I look at what am I going to learn from this? Is this going to be worth my time? Do the people who are involved in this have something that I can learn? Can they teach it? So when Jeffrey Deaver was teaching a thriller workshop, yeah, I drove the 90 miles to go take that thriller workshop. It was one day. Jeffrey Deaver knows a lot more about writing thrillers than I ever would. So that's cool. If it's something where somebody's just trying to sell me on how to do ads, I can learn how to do ads. I can read about that. I don't have to go to that. Something like the Smarter Artist Summit, that was a no-brainer, because there you go in and you're surrounded by other people who are doing the work, and the connections that you make at someplace like the Smarter Artist Summit, you cannot match that anywhere. Same thing with writers conferences. You can meet other writers. If I didn't go to writers conferences, a lot of writers I never would have met who've helped me out, and editors and agents. I mean, Donald Moss gave a workshop at the Pikes Peak Writers Conference that was amazing. So of course I pay to go to something like that. What do they have to offer that you need to learn? And never stop learning, because if you stop learning, you might as well just, you're done, because things change so fast, especially now. You have to be able to adapt. So you need the craft knowledge, and you also have to keep your eye on what's going on with the business. And if you can't do those things, well, you're not going to make it whether you do the traditional thing or not.
You seem really balanced.
Agents are going to mislead you.
You seem really balanced between those two things, figuring out how to market your work and the craft. Do you feel like you're 50-50 in your head, or do you balance one or the other?
Well, I feel I'm always wanting to learn craft, even though I feel like I'm pretty good at it. But I will always learn more craft, because that's where you grow. And business, I always want to learn more business, because business is how you get the sales to where you drive readers to your work.
Now, I have a question regarding going to writers' conferences or a workshop or any of those things. I think a lot of writers, and I'm speaking mostly for myself here, a lot of writers are introverts and they're shy, and they don't really know how to approach people, or even what to, like, a lot of people make a bad approach. Like, they'll just come up and they'll try to sell you on something, or they'll try and, like, here, read my book. It's just very awkward and it never works. What approach do you think people should have when they go to these things, so they can sort of network but not like beat someone over the head? And how do you like make that connection?
Well, you have to be genuine. I think that's the main thing. You have to be genuine, because when you are approaching people at like a writers conference or like the Smarter Artist Summit or something, they're not going to be buying your books. They're writing their own books. Writers, you want to sell to readers, not to other writers.
Right.
So I don't worry about whether or not people have read my books and at a conference or something. If somebody wants one, sure, I don't mind giving them one. That's fine. But I'm never going to say, hey, have you read my book? Could you review my book? Could you do this? Could you? No.
You may as well wear a shirt that says punch me.
I want to get that shirt.
Exactly.
Sean's mom made one.
That's not
I
what
just happened to say Nintendosaurus.
Or get one with an arrow pointed to the next guy. Punch him, right? So that works too. I don't want to get hit. But yeah, that's kind of my take on that. I think that you always have to be genuine, and as long as you're sharing as much as you're giving, you give and you take, it's good. People are happy to talk. They want to learn, and people are happy to share. That was an amazing thing at that summit, is just the generosity of everybody who was there. And I learned as much from the people who were in the audience as I did from the people who were up at the front of the room.
Yeah, I actually would take that one step farther and say that I think it's great in any kind of exchange, especially if you go and you don't know people, give more than you take. Like,
Yes.
just as much as you can listen. And I imagine that I didn't know you last year, Gary, but I'm sure if I had observed you, you would have been listening a lot. So, you know, I mean, that's it. You want to be able to help as often as you can. If you overhear somebody in a situation and they're struggling with something and you know the answer to that, don't be shy, pipe up and help. Like, don't keep things to yourself, because it's amazing how much that stuff comes back to you.
And there were a lot of people that did that last year. And I know, like, when somebody was like talking about something, like when we had questions and answers, somebody would have a question and somebody else in the audience might have an answer. And then I would see like people like kind of getting together and making connections and helping one another. And I'm sure that a few like writing partnerships and business partnerships sprang from that. And it came from a place of wanting to help, not a place of like, oh, what can that person do for me sort of thing. And I think I was very pleasantly surprised by how awesome our audience was. And I know, you know, we have a large audience, and it's always hello. There's always going to be like that, like there's always going to be people that are in it for the wrong reason. But I think like everybody that we saw at the thing last year, at the summit last year, like I was just blown away by how amazing everybody was and how helpful they were. It was a very positive experience.
No, our community is definitely filled much more with givers than takers, and that was really on display.
Yeah, that's amazing.
All right, so let's shut this down, Gary. Thank you so much for being on. What do you want people to know about? How can people contact you? What do you want people to know?
Oh, they can just contact me at I think it's GaryJonasBlogspot.com, something like that.
You think it is?
I don't really do a lot with the websites, I got to admit. So
he updated about a year ago.
Yeah, I'll update it one of these days. But yeah, thank you very much for doing this. I appreciate it. This has been a fun. I really enjoyed it.
Of course. Thanks for being here.
I'll see you guys here in a a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Good.
Fantastic.
All right.
Well, thanks for being on, Gary. And for the rest of you, if you're interested in Story Shop, storyshop.io. And for those of you who are watching live, we'll have another one in a minute. So thanks, everybody.
Cool.